Okay, good morning, everyone. So, without further ado, we're going to start. My name's Leonie Steenkamp. I head up the marketing department, and with us today is Brent Mackay, and he's going to be doing the second part to our AI webinar, sharing with you insights into how you can use it and actually benefit by using it in your like day-to-day activities. So, without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Brent Mackay. Sorry, before I do hand over, just a few house rules. Please remember to remain muted. You can post your comments in the chat and we'll attend to them. And then also we will be sharing the recording as well as the certificates for attendance afterwards as well. So now, without further ado, I'll be handing over to Brent Mackay.
Hi, thanks, Leonie. So yes, today we'll be covering a topic revolving around AI on how to speak to it to get the best out. So that's pretty much prompt engineering. So we're going to jump in and really go through it in quite an overview, because you can actually have a course on prompt engineering. So it's quite an in-depth thing where obviously we would go through exercises and examples until the candidates would actually understand it properly. But we hope to give you a decent overview that can give you all that you need to know to be able to get your prompts running quite decently in our session today. So I'm just going to share the presentation and then we can get started. Sorry, Leonie, I'm not able to screen share.
Okay, should be sorted.
Okay, there we go. Okay. So we'll be looking at prompt engineering and essentially how to use this to unlock the potential of AI. So when we're talking about prompt engineering here, I'm not talking about a particular AI tool. So we can use ChatGPT as an example for this, but you can actually use these techniques in any of the AI tools out there, whether you're using Gemini or ChatGPT or any of the others. Although we're looking at it from a text point of view in this instance, you can use similar principles when looking at things like text to image generation and all those type of AI products out there as well. So when we take a look at the concept, well, first of all, today we just cover the key elements of what prompt engineering is, learn how to apply these concepts in real estate scenarios, and improve interactions with AI for better results. Now, I'm not going to go through a full list. We unfortunately don't have time to look at all the possible real estate scenarios or estate agency scenarios. But what I will do is I will apply these to a set of real world scenarios, and we'll provide a document in our follow-up email with some examples on how to apply these particular prompting tips to the stuff we had covered in our previous session. So today's session will cover how to do this, and I will provide a little leaflet for you on some of the scenarios and some possible prompts or example prompts. So one thing to bear in mind, though, is that we can't possibly think up all the possible things that you will use it for. So if you learn how to do it properly, then for future, as you think up a scenario, you'd know how to apply that on your side. So there's not going to be a one-fits-all document you can download and you can just always copy paste from there and use all of the prompts. There are some companies that provide similar documents you can purchase that are for all different types of businesses, and you can find something similar in there that might work for you and then just adjust it slightly. But if you understand the concepts on how to properly prompt, you don't really need those. You can type them up yourself. And also won't be going through details on how to actually create your own GPTs and things like that in ChatGPT, where you can almost pre-program it to follow a number of steps. Those are things that you can actually do and then share across your colleagues. So between a group of you at an agency level, you can create fixed prompts on how to reply to email. So you just copy paste your email in, hit a button, and it gives you a proper reply. All the prompting, everything's been preset into the Save GPT. things also like having an email where you have a whole email thread from a client that has all the details of the property that we're speaking to the client via email and potentially WhatsApp, and the up and down communication from the beginning that contains all the information about the property. So the number of bedrooms, for instance, and other details that you may have discussed about the property in that email thread. You can set up a pre-stored GPT that you simply copy and paste that email thread into, and then hit a button, and it will generate things like your little property description that you're going to upload to your property when you upload it onto your various sales platforms. So you can go and create those yourself if you understand prompt engineering. We unfortunately won't be covering exactly how to create that in this session. Right, so to move on, if we look at what is prompt engineering, so we touched on that briefly, but just essentially it is about crafting inputs that guide AI to generate the desired output. So AI has got a lot, and if you give it just a simple question of just give me this, it will produce stuff for you. It has a fair understanding because it looks at all the other previous prompts for all the different people in the world, and it actually learns as it goes along as well. So as you ask questions, it produces output, and as other people out there doing similar things, it will start to learn kind of what you meant by your question that you posed. So you'll get some output, but it might be output that was more desirable by someone else that put it in, and then you're not getting exactly what you need. So if you ask the right question, you will get the right output. And that's essentially what the prompt engineering is. It's how to ask the right question in the right way that you get out what you actually want to get out. And it's important, obviously, so that you can get the clarity, the relevance, and the accuracy on your AI response. So it's not just a case of I put a question in, I get something out. Then I can ask follow-up questions and say, no, I didn't want this, I wanted this. And so you can go on a whole long ramble and finally get kind of what you wanted, or you could craft the input perfectly in the beginning or fairly close to perfect, and you save yourself a lot of time and get out exactly what you want right in the beginning. Right, so the benefits of doing that obviously is for improved clarity on the stuff that you're getting from the AI, the thoroughness of that content that you're getting, better decision making on the AI's part as to how to provide content to you and what content it should be providing to you, and enhanced training. So also when you're prompting, it's learning the whole time. So it will improve the way it's going to respond with you later on as well. So common pitfalls and how to avoid them. So the main pitfalls, and when we cover the how-tos on this in a moment, you will see that it actually will resolve these anyway. But the things to avoid are vagueness, so being vague about exactly what it is that you want. And then overloading with information, which is the exact opposite of vagueness. So you're trying to be too specific and going to a long ramble of paragraphs or pages long about exactly what you want the AI to do. Remember that AI works on looking at the relationships between words inside a piece of text. And essentially all it's remembering, it doesn't understand the actual text, it's just remembering the way that each word relates to other words and at which distance they relate to each other. So if you provide too much text in the beginning, it can actually not get confused, but it can actually warp the understanding or the metrics of the data that it's going to look at, and you don't get the response that you need. So often being more concise and precise in your question gets you far better output than typing in a whole long detailed list. And then also assuming context. So you can't assume that the AI is going to just understand the context that you want to use the query that you're prompting to it. But we'll go through that and explain that in a moment. So the way to avoid that obviously is to be clear and specific, provide necessary context that's required with not overloading, but also making sure that you've provided enough to not be vague, and enough to have provided the context that's needed for the query to be understood properly, and then balance the information. So, and also don't have repetition in your information, in your question. Be fairly concise, but provide the necessary data. So that if someone just told you that, you'd go, okay, that's quite simple to understand, but how do I do that? Because you're saying, don't be vague, but provide context. Don't give too much information. Don't let it assume context, etc. So how do we go about that? Well, there's key elements to a well-structured query or prompt that you put into any GPT or any AI tool. And those key elements have multiple components that are, well, the first one is actually mandatory. You have to have this component for it to be able to work. And you'll find that even your very basic prompts that you might have been using or that you wish to use, that you will already have this in. Then you'll have some that are important that should be there, should not be left out. And there are others that are then nice to have. So things that you can add that make things better for you, but you don't have to have them. That will generate the prompt just fine and give you the details per what you require, but not necessarily how well it could respond back to you. So we go through these in a moment, but before we start, I just want to get a quick understanding of the feeling of the group as to where they would use AI. So I'm going to have a Liani load a poll to just see whether you would actually, but before, Liani, don't know just yet. So I'll just explain the meaning behind it. The poll is going to simply ask that if there was a free application that you could load on your phone, that you could use where you would upload your sale agreements, the template of your sale agreement, and then that app would guide you to, using AI, guide you to actually complete the sale agreement, populating the details of the buyers and prospective sellers, and then store that sale agreement, and also help you with the process of getting the various people to sign. So it'll guide you through the process so that buyers and sellers can be involved in the signing part of it without speaking directly to each other, but via you using the AI built into that app. But the main part then would be that app would store the actual sale agreements within the app, so that you don't ever have to open the sale agreement to get an answer to anything on that sale agreement. All you would do it in a future world is simply you'll pose a question to that app, and the app would answer. So you'd say something like, for property on 21 Dean Street, what is the expected the required registration per the sale agreement, and what is the occupational rent going to be if they move in tomorrow? That AI tool will then be able to look in that sale agreement, look for those details for you, calculate based on the registration date and based on the current date, calculate the actual potential occupational rent. So if an app like that was available, would you use it? And I'm not saying there is one, I'm not saying anyone's going to be building one, I'm just wanting to find out if these tools that exist, what is the interest of the people out there for actually using and consuming AI? So Liani, you can launch that poll, thanks. All right, so then we'll carry on with our key elements. And the first one being task. So you've got task, you've got context, you've got exemplar, you've got person, you have format, and you have tone. So task is mandatory, context and exemplar are important, and person, format, and tone are nice to haves in your prompt. I'm going to go through these now to explain what they actually mean and how you would use them. I'm going to use an example that is probably not going to be super useful for you in the market, but just to actually explain these with an example so you can see what we're talking about. All right, so the first element being task. So this is something you absolutely have to have in your prompt to any AI tool out there. And this is what actually tells it what it needs to do. So it's the primary action or question for the AI. So it's an essential part of guiding the AI's response. There are multiple ways of doing it. So I'll give you 2 examples here. So for instance, a vague option would be, tell me about buying a home in South Africa. If you type that into ChatGPT, for instance, it would respond with some answer to that. There might be a more clear way of saying that, as in describe the process of buying a home in South Africa. But essentially, this is the action you're asking the AI to take. So this is the part where you tell it, draw me a picture, or draft an email for me, or summarize this document, or generate a report for me. So that's basically the task side of it that you have going to tell it to do. Right, this part is obviously no-brainer that it's mandatory. The next part, though, is context. So this is also very important. You can leave it out, but it lands up with far less important information, or at least pertinent information. So the background on what you wanted to do actually helps the AI to understand the specific topic, and it adds the depth and relevance. So example would be, as a real estate agent in Cape Town, explain the process of buying a home in South Africa. So now it's not just a case of explaining the process of buying a home, but the context is that it's going to be for South Africa, or at least for Cape Town, not just South Africa. And you can actually then add some additional stuff into the context here as well. And one of the things to add in there would be the audience. So who is it that this is drafting for? So in this case, you're saying as an estate agent in Cape Town, so it knows from which context point of view it's looking to generate the text, from the point of view of a real estate agent and around Cape Town. You could also add in, explain the process of buying a home in South Africa for consumption by first-time home buyers, for instance, in the age group 20 to 35. So the context that you provide there enables the AI to respond more appropriately to your query. Then we've got exemplar. So exemplar is just the example of how you want it to respond. So this is also important because it helps it to structure or find structure on exactly how you want it to respond. So you illustrated the expected response. You can do this by not just typing in some details. You can actually refer to other content. So in ChatGPT 4.0, for example, you can upload documents to say, look at this example for the way I want the report to look. You can even reference websites. So you can say, there's a guy that I like whose articles are generated very nicely, and I want my article to be in a similar fashion. So you could say, look at the website and give a web address for details on how to draft or how I want this particular article to be formed. So although you can actually just type a simple thing, in this case, the example is describe the process of buying a home in South Africa, including, and now you give it some examples, finding a property, making an offer, securing a mortgage, and closing the deal. So obviously this would be more appropriate if you typed in all the details that you wanted to have from your side. So I'm just saying securing a mortgage instead of mortgage loan or anything along those lines, or bond, and then closing the deal instead of concluding the sale between buyer and seller. But you can incorporate those if you wish. So you have an example. You then move on to person. So this is a nice to have, but incorporating this, I actually try and incorporate this in every single prompt that I use, because it makes a huge difference to the outcome. So you assign the AI an actual role, and then it tailors this response to that viewpoint. So an example here is, as an experienced real estate agent, describe the process of buying a home in South Africa. So obviously the primary action or question for the AI is then posed. But what would happen here is, you don't have to just say, as an experienced real estate agent. You can actually say things like, you are a real estate agent focusing on property sales in the Cape Town area, specifically, let's say, Table View of South Africa, and you have 25 years experience in the field. And then you give the rest of the prompt. So it will answer based on that. And the number of years experience that you tell it to have will also change the way it responds, because it will consider the fact that if you've been in the property industry for 25 years, there are certain things you'd been privy to, or that would have changed the way you interact. Whereas if you've been in for 3 years, you'd have obviously less knowledge, you would have less impact of things that happen in a longer time period from now. That's more important when the roles that you're assigning have fixed timeframes to them. So if I'm talking about, for instance, a software developer, and I say you've got 3 years experience or in AI development, that's more than sufficient for the current tools that are out there. If I wanted to generate replies based on more historic tools that are out there, then I might say you've got 10 years or 15 years experience and so forth. So you can curtail the persona that you give the AI before they respond to be the type of person you would best be wanting to ask this question to. So that's the simplest way, is just, if I wanted someone to go and perform this task for me, who would the perfect person be that would be performing the task? And then you just tell the AI to be that person, and then give it the rest of the prompt. Right, so then you got the format. So this is once again nice to have, but it gives you the desired structure of the response and organize the information in a preferred layout. So for instance, you'd have provide a step-by-step guide to buying a home in South Africa in bullet points. So this is, you can tell it exactly how you've got the question, you've got an answer coming out, but how do you want that answer to be laid out? And here it also depends on which AI you're interacting with as to what structures and layouts they can actually handle. But for ChatGPT, for instance, I'll just give you some examples over here of what formats you can ask for. So you can ask for paragraph format, where it's obviously a block of text providing a detailed response. And I'm not going to go through all the examples here, but I've put them there so you can just get a brief understanding of how you would ask. So in this case, explain how AI can help estate agents improve their productivity in a paragraph. So just the part of in a paragraph tells it how to format the response. You can have bullet points, which is a list of key points often used for step-by-step. You can have a numbered list, which is similar to bullet points, but actually numbers them. So step 1, step 2, step 3 to show rank. Then you can have a table output. So this is nice if you've got data that you need to represent that's got different columns and rows. So example here would say create a table comparing traditional and AI-driven real estate marketing strategies. Charts and graphs. So these visually represent the data that are suitable for showing trends or redistribution and relationships. So if you ask it to generate a bar chart, for instance, and then the rest of your prompt, whatever you asked it for will be represented in that chart. But obviously when doing that, you need to make sure that the data that's going to come out is going to be something that can be presented in a chart. So it doesn't help that you're asking for something that's going to spit out a single answer that's going to be 3 or 4 words long, or maybe 2 sentences long, and then ask for that to be presented in a chart because there's not enough data. So obviously just think about that before you're asking for your output. You can also ask for a diagram. So it could be illustrations that will obviously use things like DALL-E in the background to generate. So here it'll be, for instance, draw a diagram illustrating the workflow of an AI-driven property valuation system. And that will generate that diagram for you. Infographics, very similar. So it's just a combination of charts and images. So here you would say things like design an infographic highlighting how AI impacts different aspects of real estate industry. So I'm only providing these to you for an idea of what possible formats you can ask for. Obviously, when it comes to your actual task at hand, it's nice to just have an idea of what you could ask for as for the format. So you can also ask for code snippets. This is more on the programming side. So you can ask for things like a Python code snippet to analyze the real estate data, market data using AI. That would be, well, I doubt that people will be using it too often in the real estate side of it, but if your IT people behind the scenes need to create APIs and so forth, they can ask for code snippets. You can ask for slide deck. So it's a series of slides summarizing key points. It's often used in presentations. So here you would say create a slide deck summarizing the key benefits of challenges of using AI in real estate. Flow charts, that's a diagram showing the steps in the process. Essays, so here obviously you can start letting it write a whole essay, often obviously used for in-depth exploration of a topic. So examples would be write an essay of the ethical considerations of using AI in real estate. A report, so this would be a more structured document with more detailed analysis on a specific topic. Checklist, so it's going to give a number of items to check off. So for instance, create a checklist of implementing AI tools in the real estate agency, and it'll give you a checklist of items that you can check off. So things like provide a document that I can give to a prospective buyer on things to check when they are first taking, or when they are taking a handover of a property, provide this in a checklist format. and then you can have a checklist of all the things so it's just a case of copy paste to where you want to use it and not having to go and reformat the content that's coming out. And then also case study, so you can get a detailed analysis of specific instances or examples. So for instance, write a case study on a state agent successfully using AI to improve sales. So it's not going to go and find exact case studies out there and present them to you. It's going to create one which is probably going to be fictitious. But so you can actually, if you give enough data in your prompt and say present this as a case study, you will get it presented in that format. Then there's obviously an FAQ format. So it's a list of frequently asked questions and their answers. If you're writing articles, it can be actually quite handy to say include an FAQ at the end. So it'll take all the content that is used to help you create the article and create a small little FAQ that you can just put in a different font or put in a little colored block at the end of the article just to have a little pop. Because obviously when people are reading articles, they don't actually read the whole thing these days. They scan through with their eyes, and if there's something interesting that stands out, they might read a few of the items in that particular piece of text. So that FAQ is a nice way for them to actually have a quick summary of what the details in the article were about. Interview transcript. So yeah, it's a case of a written record of an interview. So provide an interview transcript with a real estate agent who uses AI tools, and it will project a potential interview and then obviously put it in a transcript format. You could have it in a narrative format, so for storytelling. So write a narrative describing a day in the life of an estate agent using AI. That is less likely to be used in industry, but it is possible, especially if you want to do bedtime stories for the children and so forth. Review, so you can have an evaluation or critique of a product, service, or concept. So yeah, just say write a review of the latest AI software for real estate agents, but you can also help write reviews on things like properties or the like if you provide some information or sufficient information. You can have a summary, so this is obviously an overview of the key points, and then flow diagram, so graphical representation showing the flow of the data process. This is more when data is involved, which is then slightly different from the previous diagrams that we had. So create a flow diagram to illustrate the process of using AI to match clients with properties, as an example. Right, now that we've had the format, another nice to have is tone. So this is also actually quite important when asking AI to produce something. You can leave it out. It is a nice to have, but if you put this in, you're going to get out something you can actually just use rather than have to go and edit it all over the show. So this represents the style or mood of the response, and it matches the response to the intended audience. So if you are saying that my audience is a prospective home buyer from the South African region or from Germany, for instance, in the age group of so-and-so, it already starts to create a tone, but you can be more specific and say, well, I want this to be professional, or I want to be lighthearted and fun, etc., etc. So in this case, we're saying, describe the process of buying a home in South Africa in a friendly and informative tone. So when it comes to the tone side of things, it can be difficult to think of, well, how do I want to tell it to present this information? So I've just given a quick synopsis of some possible tones you can use. You can combine these. So you can say, for instance, in a formal but friendly tone. So you don't have to use just one of these, but you've got formal, you've got informal, then we have friendly, we've got professional, conversational, authoritative tone, empathetic tone, humorous tone, inspirational tone, persuasive tone. So you can also use a professional but persuasive tone, for instance. Neutral, optimistic, pessimistic, urgent, cautious, excited, sympathetic, sarcastic, melancholic, confident. Right, so with those, you've got, I'm just going to jump right back quickly to the beginning, just to go through all of them again. So there you've got the task that's telling it exactly what to do. You've got the context to make sure it understands in what fashion it needs to respond. The example for what you wanted to include, the persona that you're going to give it, so it knows how to respond, and with that, an audience, which helps as well. The format and how to present the response to you. And it's important with the format as well that you specify how long you want it to be. So if I said provide in bullet points, that kind of helps to give the AI an idea that I want to have summary on this whole thing. But I could say provide a short article using no more than 800 words, for instance. Or I could say in one paragraph, no more than 3 sentences long. And so forth. So you can actually be quite specific on the amount of output you want, and that'll dictate on how exactly it's going to, what detail it's going to include in the response. And tone is obviously quite important there as well. If you're going to be using, your response that you get from the AI to share with someone else, so if it's not something that you're going to be consuming for yourself, then it's important actually to have the tone in there. So if you are using it for things like social media posts, uploading to content to websites, whether it be replies to emails and so forth, then tone is very important to have included in that. Right, so let's get back down. So another thing that's possible to do, so if you just take those topics that I've given now and apply that, you have more than enough to actually go and create decent prompts. So another concept that exists when it comes to prompting is called chain of thought prompting. So chain of thought prompting means you start with something more wide, and then you slowly make it more specific. And you can do this in a single prompt. So in this case here, it says, explain the process of buying a home in South Africa. Then you'll say, start with finding a property, then move on to making an offer, securing a mortgage, and finally close the deal. But this essentially, that doesn't explain it that well. Essentially what you're doing is you could start off by saying, as a prompt, let's just say, analyze the current market in this area and provide a summary of XYZ in that market. And then it provides the data on that. You then have a follow-up question to say, take that data and produce a bullet point or an article or whatever based on that data. So for instance, if I just say, take the following items that are performed by an estate agent on a daily basis and explain in detail what those tasks would entail. So that'll be my initial part of the prompt. And then when it responds back, I would then say, now that we've got this detail, tell me how AI could be useful in each of these circumstances. And it can then respond back. But you can do that in a single prompt by saying, considering an estate agent in the South African market and all the tasks they perform on a day-to-day basis, first list and discover all those tasks that they perform, then considering the output, provide a list of ways that AI could help estate agents. So if you put it in that format with a start wide, then go narrow down to what you actually want, you get the AI to actually produce a lot more data that's more relevant, and then answer the question actually based on that data, not based on all the data that it has access to. So chain of thought prompting can be quite powerful, especially when it comes to dealing with large topics that you need to condense. So when it comes to marketing and so forth, it's quite handy to use that there. Negative prompting. So this is something where you tell it what not to do, and it should be used cautiously, because if you remember how AI works, it works with relationships between words. So once again, just taking a particular word that's in your prompt, looking at the relationship between the words in your prompt, then looking at relationships of all the words it knows to find the words that it's going to actually form to provide an answer to you. And as it's doing that live, it's looking at the relationships between the words it's providing, and it changes. So if you actually look at when you send a prompt to an AI tool like ChatGPT, you'll see it actually starts providing some content, and then it changes that content before it actually finalizes, because it's reevaluating the distance and the relationship between each word that it's producing. So if you put something there saying, don't do this, it is possible that that one item word gets used as one of the key elements in its relationships, And then once the relationship starts being formed, it starts looking at the relationship between other words and that word that you'd wanted to leave out. So it can actually sometimes, if you say don't do this or exclude this, it can actually bring it in more than you want to, rather than leaving it out. It can actually start highlighting that. In our last presentation, I mentioned that I used the AI ChatGPT with DALL-E to actually create an image, and it created an image with a robot that looked quite mean. I asked it to change the robot to be more friendly. It put it as a cat robot. I said, please remove the cat robot, and it then put in an actual cat. So it's like dealing with a little genius. If you don't tell it exactly what you want, it can be quite to the point and assume its own detail. So when it comes to telling it not to do things, be very careful and rather be more precise about the type of information you want rather than what you don't want. So a good example in this is describe the process of buying a home in South Africa, but do not include information about rental properties. So something here as well as you could say, what are the benefits for real estate agents in South Africa in the Cape Town region when using AI specifically for property sales and not rental properties. So that's where you would use something like negative prompting to tell it don't include the rental market, or you'd say specifically for rental properties, exclude home purchases and so forth. You could say just make this for a commercial property, or make it only specific to residential property. And that way around, more specific actually tells it what not to do without using the word, which is better than actually putting the word saying don't use this, because that can lead to it actually using it more than it should. All right, so the practical application of the prompt method we've explained. So I'll take an example prompt of the little prompts we've been building along the way. And rather than just saying explain, if you remember on the beginning, we said explain the property buying process in South Africa. You could say, as an experienced real estate agent in Cape Town, describe the process of buying a home in South Africa, provide a step-by-step guide in bullet points, including finding a property, making an offer, securing a mortgage loan, and closing the deal. Use a friendly and informative tone. For example, first search for properties online and visit open houses. Next, make a competitive offer and help with the help of your real estate agent. The example part that it puts in here is not going to actually use that. It's going to use that for an example of how to lay out the context. So that's essentially how you would do that for that particular type of prompt. So some tips and tricks here. Progressive elaboration. So like we said before, start broad and then narrow it down as you go along. You can do this with follow-up prompts. So you can ask a question, it responds with some data. You then follow up with some additional ways about that data and additional ways about that data. So in our previous presentation, an example of asking for potential marketing, potential social media posts that I could do as an estate agent in the Table View area or Milnerton area. And when it responds back, it'll say, these are potential things you can do. I'll then say, okay, for that item number so-and-so, give me some examples of what I could do. And another thing you can also do is ask for multiple outputs. You could say, provide 5 options, for instance, provide 2 options, 3 options. Don't go too big. So things like, especially if your output's going to be in a article or a response in a report format, you don't want to provide 30 possible options, because there's a thing called context window that is in play with the different AI tools. And that means that every single time you're typing something in, it's considering all the text that it's responded to you before, that it has got in its input window, output window, anything that you've attached that you're using in documents and so forth. It reconsiders all of that every single time it produces something. So if it's producing 3 options, it does a fairly good job. If you're asking for 100 options, you're going to start getting really bad options coming through. So just limit that to 3-4 options when you're asking for options. Role playing, so assign, like we said, assign AI specific role. The thing there was to think of the person you best want to be interacting with as an actual human, and then tell the AI that is their persona. be fairly specific as to what that person, or what makes that person the specific person that you want to speak to. So if it's from a banking point of view, you could say a banker who's been in the international and South African market for 15 years, for instance. So if you need to have anything from an international context in the response. And then you can request comparisons as well. So if it comes to asking for data, and you could provide data and ask it to do comparisons for you, but you can also ask for when it comes to understanding a concept. So if you get an article that you're trying to understand, or any other website you're trying to understand something on, you can actually say, provide a comparison with pros and cons to help me understand this, and it'll actually present it in quite a nice way. So if you see this is the good parts of the thing, this is the bad parts of the thing, it helps you understand as well. But you can even let it compare things. So for instance, and another part of the context is also very important to tell it which country and language you want the data in. So for South Africa, you can specify South African English, otherwise it'll be producing things in American English. And that's quite a difference as well, quite important to have, because all your spell checks that you have will also focus on American English, and you will often have an article that you'll put out then and people will go, oh, clearly this wasn't written by a human because it's got American English in it. And it's in a South African context. So those are things also to bear in mind. But if you then provide it, so let's say I provide a piece of text and I'll say, this is a piece of text, please change this to South African English. And then you could add in the little piece to say, and provide a comparison as to what changed and why. And then it'll give you the first set of data that you've supplied. It then gives you the response with the text that's provided back in South African English, but it also tells you what it changed and why it changed it, so you can see if you want to use the changes or not. And then you can use hypothetical situations as well when interacting. So it doesn't have to be real world situations. This just helps you explore possible outcomes that AI can produce for you. And you can incorporate feedback. This is a very important part at the end. After you've got a response back from AI, just remember that AI is learning the whole time from what you're putting in and what it's giving back. And if you then say, yes, this is helpful, this worked for me, or you say, no, it didn't, next time around, it will actually change the way it replies back. But bear that in mind, because if you're putting sensitive information in, the AI is learning from that sense of information. So that's just something to bear in mind when you are interacting with AI. If your AI is not an offline AI that you've had created for yourself, just bear in mind that you don't necessarily want to put sensitive information. You can rather use hypothetical scenarios there to get the content to a close enough point where you can then amend it yourself. But the feedback that you provide, so if you then say, yes, this was helpful, no, this was not helpful, each time you then interact with the AI tool, it will actually provide it for you in a better format until eventually you don't have to provide as detail on your input prompts. And if you are using tools like ChatGPT, for instance, if it's the purchased version, it actually does remember all the different contexts that you're putting in. So if you start off by saying, I am an estate agent in the Grabouw area of South Africa, and then you ask for a prompt, it will kind of remember that. So later on, when you're asking for some tips and tricks of what you could do on a daily basis or in your downtime, it'll actually, you'll see that it'll start bringing in the fact that you are a real estate agent in Grabouw into those things. So it remembers some of the context as well. It doesn't do that on the free version as well. There are ways to go and tell the free version what your context is, so you can keep that in mind all the time. But also just bear that in mind if you are using a tool like ChatGPT and you're trying to get output for your own context, and you're also using it, for instance, for your child who's at school or for your husband and some context there, just bear in mind that each time when you prompt, be specific of who it is that you're prompting for, so that it doesn't start responding based on the stuff it's learned that your child wanted for their school homework or whatever, or assignments and so forth. And also, if you are using it to respond to things, just always bear in mind that you should consider the fact that it is not you performing the task, it is AI performing the task. And even though you're going to use this stuff, look over it from a human perspective to make sure you're happy with the results before you let it hit the send button or use the article or so forth. Also, just bear in mind about legislation that may be in place now or may come further down the road. So if you are using AI to help you with an online test, for instance, and if the test specifies that you may not get help from someone else, well, getting help from AI is getting help from someone else. So those are things just to bear in mind. So make sure that if you are using AI, you're allowed to use AI in that instance, not just now, but for future, where things might say, well, if you did use AI in the past, those things you no longer qualify, etc., etc. Just in case the laws are applied retrograde. And then if you are using it straightforward, and it's not just a case of helping you get content, but actually providing the content, it's often best to actually just be upfront and let people know that there's AI involved in the response. That's right. So now we can just look at some real life examples. So here I'm going to look at 2 case studies. The first one is using GPT for client communication, and a second one is developing a market plan with GPT. So on the first case study, let's assume we've got Jane, who's an experienced real estate agent in Cape Town, and she wants to improve her client communication using GPT. So she's particularly interested in crafting effective emails and messages that address common client queries and concerns. So the challenge Jane has is that she often struggles with responding quickly and accurately to a high volume of client inquiries. And she also needs a way to ensure her responses are informative, professional, and tailored to each client's needs. So here, Jane could then decide to use something like ChatGPT to generate emails and messages for common scenarios. So such as, for instance, introducing herself to new clients, following up on property viewings, and providing market updates. So she would create a set of tasks. So yeah, she would have a task definition, for instance, something like to clearly define the task in ChatGPT. She could say something like, write a follow-up email for a client who recently viewed a property. And then she'd provide some context. She'd say, as a real estate agent in Cape Town, so write the follow-up and so forth, and add exemplar to it. She would then say, as a real estate agent in Cape Town, write a follow-up email for a client who recently viewed a 3-bedroom house in Milnerton. And then the exemplar would be, for example, dear client, I hope you enjoyed the viewing of the 3-bedroom house in Milnerton. If you have any questions or further information, please let me know. Best regards, Jane. So supply that little bit of an example. Then she can add persona to it to say that as an experienced real estate agent, write a follow-up email. And then the format obviously is going to be in the email format, and the tone here would be user-friendly and professional tone. So then in that way, Jane could provide some a response that she could use on a regular basis. So obviously the response she's got, she can just store in her drafted items in an email. And every time she needs to respond, she can just take that draft, copy paste it into the current email, and then just amend 1 or 2 things here and there. If you're using something like a purchase product of ChatGPT, you can actually create your own custom GPT that has this already built into it, where you can paste the details of the property and hit the button, and it generates the query for you and with the actual email reply. So the context part that you've basically pre-saved as a query or a prompt for ChatGPT. So the part that says, as a real estate agent in Cape Town with 20 years experience in the market, please write a follow-up email for the client who recently viewed the property per the provided example. And you then following the example of, dear client, I hope to, or dear Mrs. Smuts, I hope to enjoy the viewing of the 3-bedroom house in Milnerton. If you have any questions, etc., etc. And then you attach the email. And if you'd save that as a custom GPT, all you need to do in future, rather than copy paste all the stuff in and make the changes to the 3-bedroom house in Milnerton, etc., is just paste the detail of the property, and then it will generate the email for you. But if you don't want to pay for it, you can generate it once off and just save it in your drafts and just amend them each time. So that could be helpful. So then we look at a second scenario. So the second case study, we're developing a marketing plan or strategy for using GPT. So here we have, let's just call him Mike, who's a real estate agent specializing in luxury properties in Cape Town, South Africa. And he wants to develop a comprehensive marketing plan for his listings to attract high-end buyers. So the challenge would be creating detailed, effective marketing plans that requires a significant amount of time and research. Obviously, time is money in this market. So Mike needs to find a way to streamline this process, but also ensure high quality output. So one way could just be get an assistant, but another way could be using something like ChatGPT as your little AI assistant. So in this case, Mike can decide to use ChatGPT to generate a marketing plan. It includes the strategies for online and offline marketing, with target audience and identification included, as well as promotional activities. So the task for ChatGPT would obviously be to create create a marketing plan for a luxury property listing. But then you need to make sure that you include the context into it. So yeah, you'd say, as a real estate agent in Cape Town, create a marketing plan for a 5-bedroom villa in Camps Bay. So the part of adding the villa in Camps Bay gives additional context of the fact that it's going to be for high-end properties. And then the exemplar would be include sections such as target audience, online marketing strategies, and offline promotional activities. So then it obviously would include the target audience, the online marketing strategies, and offline promotional activities in its output. The persona, you could say that you start by saying, as a marketing expert with 15 years experience, create a marketing plan, blah, blah, blah. And then obviously there's a format for the output. You could say, provide the marketing plan in a structured format with headings and bullet points. And then you could say, for tone, use a professional and persuasive tone. So once you do that, you just type that all into ChatGPT, you will get a fairly decent marketing strategy, marketing plan. You can actually enhance those a little bit to say, well, take this plan and provide examples. We'll provide 10 examples that I could use for a one-a-day social media drip campaign. And then you can even automate these things by, if you have things like the paid version of ChatGPT, you can use other tools like Canva and the AI that they have in there. So Canva, if you're on a paid version of Canva, has a bulk create option where you can actually bulk create video. You can then have the prompt for output, putting it in a table format. So you give a table format of the 7 videos you're going to produce each week, and obviously give 10 options so you can choose which ones you want to actually use. But once you've got your table of video content with the details of the different things that you can have inside, if you break it down into different categories, if you have a video in mind, a video structure in mind, you can use something like Canva to automatically import that table and then create 10 videos that use that same layout, use the same structured layout, but pull the data from that table. And you can then let something like make.com automatically post those videos to your YouTube channel for you each day. So once you've used something like ChatGPT to create your prompts for your actual videos, you can then link that with, it takes a little bit of time, probably about 20 minutes of your day, to go and set up the video inside something like Canva with bulk create option. And then you can use make.com to automate that for you. But essentially 20 minutes on one day, and you've got maybe a whole month's worth of content that just automatically rolls out. So it can be very handy to use tools like this. And I will obviously apply the thought processes that we've got here for how to prompt to some of the situations that are real life tasks that are performed on a day-to-day basis by state agents, and provide a little list of example prompts. But those essentially are just examples. You should rather understand how to prompt best yourself so you can get the right thing out. because you do this for a living every single day. You're far more likely to know exactly what it is you require and ask. Just you make sure you ask it in the right way so you can get the right stuff out. All right, are there any questions at the end of the session? Liani, I don't know if you've noted anything in the chat.
No, so I haven't. There's no questions in the chat. I don't know if you wanted to share the app, the poll results. I can
If you
share
can
that.
share, that'd be great. Thank you. Yes. All right.
So there you can see.
Yeah, it does look like
54.
there's a huge portion of people. Obviously, if you're coming to a talk on AI and how to prompt, it is more likely that you're going to be one of the people that would like to use these tools. But yeah, so that's it is nice to see that it's such a huge response. That just means that given the fact that most people in this presentation anyway would like to see tools like that, there's a good chance that those tools will be built for you. So if you aren't, I mean, you can use things like ChatGPT and just copy paste for now, and then just hang in there. There will be automations that will be linking these things together. So for instance, on the Google front, I see that's already starting to bring some suggested replies into your emails if you are on their beta version, where you have buttons that appear with potential responses. So you've got an email, and when you see that email, before you've even read it, at the bottom it's got 3 buttons of potential responses without you having done anything. So these type of tools and the things that you need and want are being built, and by this time, by the end of the year next year, is going to be a huge difference in what is there and integrated into your everyday life on both Apple, Android, Windows, etc. But the main thing is start using it now. Take these tools and concepts around how to better prompt, because when those tools become more integrated, if you're prompting properly, you'll get the responses and you'll end up with the advantage. So have the AI advantage. Don't be scared of it. Go and play around. To do so, just go to chatgpt.com, create a free account, and just start typing your queries in and getting some responses out. Don't be scared to try.
Brent, we do have a few questions. The first one is from Rudy, and he says, is it possible for you to give a list of the best AI tools to be using as an agent?
So we don't know necessarily the best ones for an agent, but I have a list of AI tools that are possible for you to use for different scenarios that may relate to your environment. We will be sharing that along with the other document I mentioned that has some example prompts for use of by state agents.
Good. I think those are all the questions.
Fantastic. Thank you all for coming. I hope we provided some information that was of value to you.
Perfect. Thanks so much. And thank you, Brent, for your presentation.
Thank you and goodbye.